He took what wasn't his, he lied without shame. But now the tables are turned, justice is claimed. The streets were alive with a joy so rare. As the news spread, hearts filled with care. No more stolen funds, no more lies told. The people cheered, the corruptor was old. Justice served and they saw. Corrupted fate, it was law. Happy faces, tears of relief. They danced in the streets, their voices unified. Now every morning the sun rises bright. No more shadows, no more deceitful light. The people's voice, it echoed clear. Justice served and the town is free. Justice served, the scales were right. No more stolen goods, no more lies. The town was saved, the people fight. For justice served and they all unite. Justice served, the corrupted all. The people's hearts now they call. No more fear, no more small talk. Justice served, the talents will clap.
Greetings, my Everett friends. Good to be able to reach out and chat with you again. Just wanted to give you a little bit of an update on a few developments that are coming along, both inside the ER2 platform and its sister pages, and also independently. And independently, of course, is this effort here, which is known as Everett Reinvented. Now, the purpose here is really to provide you the voter, you the resident, with some good information on new and emerging candidates and returning candidates who have proven themselves to be fair and independent-minded. So we are featuring this podcast, which we will invite known political figures or community leaders to come on and discuss their views with me. And it'll be aired both on the ER2 exclusively and then released to the ER2 YouTube channel in general, which has no membership requirement. So if you want to see the preview or the advanced premiere, you'd have to be an ER2 member. But if you want to wait the extra couple of days till it appears up on the YouTube channel, you can go ahead and do that too. Either way, we're going to provide you some in-depth information on the candidates, especially the ones that are relatively unknown. We will have a companion website, also known as Everett Reinvented, and it will feature those candidates on a separate page. We'll have their photograph and their contact information. We may even go as far as providing an individual splash page for some of these candidates that are new to the game and low budget. So we have a lot of possibilities going on there. But the Everett Reinvented website will contain relevant, up-to-date news stories on campaign issues and articles on the candidates, any relevant, timely information such as filing dates and, last date to submit signatures and things like that. Any newsworthy events that come up in the course of the campaigning for the candidates are based on the issues or community needs. Of course, we have the soccer stadium, which is going to be no doubt front and center in the various campaigns, especially the mayor's campaign, which is in itself going to be quite interesting. So we'll be covering some of the highlights there and providing a few news stories from the website as well as the candidate pages. And there's also another page for events that I'm going to open up to the candidates, and they can put their fundraisers on there. They can put their sign holding events, coffee hours, things of that nature. Again, this is really for the voter, for the resident. So you have one central place to go to, and you can look at the various candidates. You can look at the calendar to see what's going on during the week without having to skip around from website to website to website, a flyer to flyer, a bulletin board to bulletin board to figure out what candidate's doing what or what issue is being discussed where. So that will all be hopefully a useful resource to you. And now we're going to go ahead and move along and talk to our first guest, who is indeed a woman that I admire greatly. I've had very little chance to talk to her, but I have watched her since she's come on the city council in the last election, and she has proven herself to be knowledgeable, to be compassionate, to be independent. Um, Fair minded would definitely be an understatement, but the woman has just never ceased to impress me every time she sits down at that council table or speaks across the sound system there. Her words are well thought out, and her approach is just well. I guess the best word I can find is dignified. She brings dignity to the city council at a much needed time. So, without delaying any further, let's go ahead and open our doors and welcome Councilwoman Guerline Alcy-Jabouin. Stopping in, Miss. I'll try it again,
Or just
Guerline
call me Guerline.
Alcy-Jabouin. Yeah, you call me Walter. So, and earlier on, you said I did say your name correctly. So, tell us a little bit about Guerline.
Well,
Where you from?
Guerline,
What brought you to Everett?
Guerline came to the United States when I was 11 years old. It was 6 months after my mom died. I came here to live with relatives. I grew up in Cambridge and did all my schooling here. And I have 3 sons. I am
Yeah.
married. I've lived in Everett since 2004, 2005. We purchased a home in
You
09,
did.
and I've been living here since then.
Oh,
And
great.
the whole time I lived here, I used to work in downtown. I worked at a law firm in downtown, and I also worked in investment for 15 years.
Ooh.
And then I got tired of the orange line, fighting to get
Go
on the
figure.
orange line to get home. By the time I get to Everett, it was always 6, 7 p.m.
Yeah.
So I knew of City Hall, but I never went in there. And then one time I said, there's this place right here. And I'm always fighting, always stressful to go to downtown. Why not apply in my hometown?
hmm
So I did go and apply. Before I applied, my former boss retired, so my position was eliminated
I see.
in downtown. So I got a severance package and I was looking for jobs. So I went to City Hall and applied. And I was on a boat with my husband. We went on a cruise. And then when we came back, my former boss called me and said, Guerline, City Hall just called for a reference for you. You need to reach out to them. So I reached out to them and I got the job. Because everybody is always asking me, how in the world
How did
did
it
you get a
happen? Yeah.
job at City Hall? I said,
Yeah.
God, I prayed and he saved that job for me. And I
Right.
worked there for 9 years. I worked for the mayor for 9 years.
Was that you started at 311
No, I started in his office.
in his office?
Yes, and then
And
when
then you
they
went to
started
311.
311, then some of us were moved downstairs at 311. Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And
Okay,
I've
great.
been in Everett since. Politics was not something that I was involved in because my whole life was always in downtown. Even though I lived in Everett, I was always doing everything in Cambridge, everything in downtown. As my kids get older and, I did get the job, I started campaigning, and just getting to know the community, getting to know people at the churches, the organizations, and sometimes, an organization will need translation from Haitian Creole to English. I was the
Yeah.
person to help out. And that's how it came about. I said, and I started seeing the change in the city.
Right.
And working at City Hall, lots have changed. And I said, we need somebody to stand up for the people that have no voice. And that was my motto,
Absolutely.
running. Someone that will not be scared to stand up for the
Yeah.
voiceless.
And when you're working in that direction, other elected officials who shall remain nameless are doing the exact opposite. They're trimming back people's right to speak. They're trimming back, the amount of services they provide for the level of taxes and all that. So, again, very admirable that you want to go in and change the system. It's one thing that people are out there and they complain about this, that, and the other thing, which they have a right to do. But my feeling has always been, if you're really going to, if you'll excuse the phrase, bitch the natural bitch, have a solution at hand, or at least have an idea. Work towards a solution. Don't just sit there and criticize the situation. And that's
I used
something
to
else
say
I'll
that.
remember.
I used to say, people need to run. But then as you get into the system, it's not that easy.
It's not.
It's
I
not
was a
that
part of it. I
easy.
know.
Although I was always in the system, the people did not recognize me because there's this saying, Everett, that you're not Everett.
No.
I grew up here. I have 3 boys here. I raised
Own a
3
house
boys
there.
here. But I'm
Pay
still
taxes
not
there.
considered Everett to some people. And
Now,
it's a name recognition city.
now, are you related to Gurley?
Yes, Girlie's my cousin. Girlie
All right,
Adrian's my
because that's
cousin.
what threw me in the beginning. You might
Ye-
remember that I was confusing
Yes.
you and her, and I was mixing your names up and everything else. Okay, so she's your cousin,
Yes.
and she had a well-publicized adversarial relationship with the senior management or senior staff in Everett City government.
It wasn't a good experience because Girlie will hold back. Girlie will hold back, and she's always, God will take care of it. God will take care of them. I will tell you what you're doing wrong to me. Then I will pray God and say, God, deal with them. So that's the difference.
God
I'm
may
a
take care, but
firecracker.
you're an agent of that message, so you can partake in it as well.
I'm a firecracker. You do something wrong to my community, I will stand in front of you no matter what your title is and tell you that you're wrong.
This is relevant, but a little bit off. Somebody I was in the military, for a short period of time anyway, and in basic training, I had a drill sergeant, and this little black guy come up to about here on me, up to about my nose, and he'd get up and he'd scream in everybody's face. And somebody asked me, I was home on leave, well, didn't that scare you when the guy come up and I said, no, it never bothered me when he came up and yelled in my face. I said, well, what did bother me is one time he walked up to me, he pulled me by the ear real close, and he whispered, I'm going to kick you up. I said, no, that scared me. And my point is that it's the people that you don't expect to have the resolve. And the people that are quiet, calm, and composed, well, I'm giving them the HE double hockey sticks. They're the ones that worry me because they have a limit.
Yes.
And then once you cross that, God forbid, they're going to unwind with all the frustration.
Yes, absolutely.
So it's it's a very valuable trait for you to have, or character trait for you to have in city government, because you do need to be able to hold back. You do need to be able to reserve. Which brings up as we go into the next phase of questioning here. And I'll say this to anybody that comes on that's a candidate or an elected official. I fully understand that you're here talking to me as an individual, that you do not represent the city council, that you do not officially speak for the city council or anything like that. Sure, I'm going to ask you questions that I'm trying to elucidate what your personal feelings are on how the council should move forward. But I never want you to put yourself in a position to have to defend against your colleagues when you get back there saying, hey, why did you say this? No. This is my feeling, because I know you're a plain-spoken person. So whatever you might say in that regard here is what you've already probably said.
Sure, absolutely.
All right.
So
Moving on. Go ahead.
my personal opinion, I do think that we have a good group this time around. I can honestly say, and I've said it before, way better than the current council. Of course, everybody have their own reason to run,
Right.
right? We're not always going to like each other, but this group works well with each other.
And you're never going to get 100% fidelity there either, okay? You're always going to have one or two that are in it. But so long as the majority of the people seated have the best interests of the residents, then you
Yes.
get a fighting chance. It's when all the orchestrations that went on, that has gone on over the years, where they're pretty much defeating checks and balances, where the mayor becomes a part of the school committee, where Demas, is taking dual roles as auditor and whatever the heck he was, treasurer or whatever he was there. It all broke that down. So when you get a situation like that, and there's enough people on the council that are buying into it, there's nothing you can do. But if you have a majority of people on there that are good-minded or fair-minded, you have a fighting chance. But you're always going to have one or two. And I won't go into names here, and this is common knowledge as well. But I want to emphasize a few points. One thing that I came across and was well put out a couple of years ago was an FOIA request that went in to the mayor's office, whoever. And part of the response that came out included an email that was sent in by a minor alleging that a certain council member had made sexual advances on him. And it really bothered me. It bothered me tremendously that when somebody else questioned the mayor's office on that, they refused to talk about it. There was never any hint or any rumor or any street talk or anything about an investigation going on. The last I had heard was that the mayor's office deemed the complaint not to be credible. And I really have issues with that. But in any event, so you have one person with that kind of background. You have another person who might not be, is not malicious by any stretch of the imagination, but, he's losing his fastball. It's almost like this person who is definitely a stalwart advocate has kind of sold his principles a little bit just to stay in office. And so that, there's a little bit of scrutiny. But the second part of what I want to talk to you about is kind of policy-wise, just to elicit or solicit your feelings. With the malfeasance and the I'm going to call it corruption or fraud that's gone on. A lot of this has been orchestrated through the political appointments. And I've always felt, and I went through this experience. In fact, after I was let go in Everett, I served temporarily in a town in Metro West. And as their interim, I was there for 6 months, and then the job became open for permanent. I was one of the candidates for it. But and even me being in the seat as the temporary for 6 months, I still had to compete for the job. And in competing for the job, what the town body did, town council or board of selectmen, I believe they're called, is they took the final 3 candidates that applied for the jobs, and it was open interviews. It was essentially a confirmation hearing is what it was. And the councilors voted. Rice, candidate B, candidate C. I lost, and it turned out they had I really respect the man who did get the job. He turned out to be fabulous at it, and it was a fair process. But I think it really removes that quid pro quo that goes on with a lot of appointments. I mean, you wound up with people in city government that are not qualified to be in those positions. And it's very, very dangerous. So could you share with me your feelings on whether you think there should be a confirmation committee? And also another thing, should there be an ethics committee that is proactive on the city council as well? What's your feeling on those two thoughts?
There should definitely be an ethics committee. Lots of issues that we're having at City Hall now would not be happening if we had an ethics committee. And
Agree.
number two, when it comes to boards, I feel like the administration has too much power. As some people have seen before, the public have seen before, we do have certain individuals that have come in front of the council that none of us approve, but they still get to keep their jobs.
Mhm, mhm.
And that should not happen.
Right, right, right.
It's a
So,
problem.
would you think an up and down vote by the council on each candidate is fair and a good thing to do?
We also have community members that have sent resumes that are
Oh yeah. Oh, I
extremely
know.
qualified that wants to
I
be on
know.
certain boards or any boards, but they're told that there's no openings or they already have someone. But if you look at the list, there are people that are still serving that their time have expired.
Mhm.
So all these come into the issues that are piling up at City Hall. Again, I do think that the administration does have too much power.
Right, right. Uh, I figured you kind of uh, they would share the same view on that. Definitely, I think they should go to that, and maybe you can talk to your colleagues and get together, sponsor a resolution or whatever is required to, make it part of the city charter or however administrative code, I guess, is what works. Uh, okay, so the last part, and like I say, you're welcome to stay and chat as long as you want, but the last part is kind of a going forward question. So the city, of course, and I'm definitely not sharing any news. The city leadership has found itself in a lot of hot water lately, and naturally, I'm speaking about the longevity overpayments and a few other things that kind of preceded that are probably going to all come to a head together.
Mhm.
The preceding items I'm referring to would be the lawsuit by Priya Tahaliani. Another situation where, as far as I'm concerned, based on the allegations, I mean, there was rampant racism there was discrimination, there was sexism, there was bigotry. I mean, the list goes on and on and on the bullying and illegal actions that poor gal was subjected to. And so, as the case winds through the Inspector General's office or the Ethics Committee at the State House, um, that lawsuit's coming along too. I mean, it's my understanding it got postponed until January, but there will be, as you know from having participated in those things, there'll be depositions going on, and there will be developments on that. So when you take that into consideration, and then there's a third X factor, which I don't want to commit anybody to anything, but there was another serious issue, and I know he doesn't mind me talking about it, is when the orchestration was put in place to have Tony Raymond arrested. That was just an unbelievable thumb in the eye. And the one thing about that is the reason anybody knows that it was fabricated is when the administration takes a tack like that. They want people to know that they don't need a reason to put you in jail. They'll find a reason. If they can't find a reason, they'll make one up and they'll get away with it. If they didn't convey that message, if this arrest of Tony was not so thinly veiled, and it was very well concealed, and they made it seem like it was a legitimate offense, and no, it was no influence from City Hall, and blah 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 blah, it wouldn't get the same effect that they wanted by doing this. They want to send that message out into the community that says, "Hey, you mess with this office, we're going to get you." All right. And people just don't realize what the sacrifices were involved with Tony and his family in all that. So you take situations like that, you take abusive situations in employment, less than, well, I'll call it a hostile workplace atmosphere that you had to endure. And I know since she has widely spoken out on this. You have situations where people like Wendy Murphy, not Wendy Murphy, I'm sorry. Wendy was she was subjected to quite a bit, of rude treatment, retaliatory treatment, and all that. So the question is, how do we unwind this? Part of it is through the election. And it's my understanding, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, if you know whether I'm wrong or not, that at this point in time, when it comes to that longevity issue, DeMaria is adamant he is not going to repay that. He is adamant that he did not receive due process. He is adamant that it was unfair and a one-sided investigation. What options, now I'm not asking what the council is going to do, but what options has the attorney and the IG's office put before the council that gives you some tools to deal with that when he digs his feet in and refuses to pay and to follow the recommendations of the IG's office? What?
Well, and Walter, I don't want to speak directly on that matter, but what I can tell you and what I've said at the meetings before, if this was me or any other council or anyone from the city, we would be watching the council meetings or any type of news behind bars.
Right.
For a fact.
Right.
We if we're looking at Boston, I think the council and the councilor in Boston agreed to do a year in one day for $1,500.
Yes.
We're talking about a lot of money in Everett. Not just not $2,000, not $5,000. It's a lot of money. And I don't know if the state will come out and say, hey, this is what we found and fabricate paperwork.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that, I can say from what's been provided that there are some teeth to them.
But you as a citizen or as a resident, your personal feelings, again, not as a council, what do you think should happen? Should he resign? Should he face...
As a taxpayer,
Did he experience that due process he wants?
As a taxpayer, due process or not, we were told that this investigation was going on for 3 years.
Right.
We didn't know about it. I don't know who in his office knew about it. But for 3 years, as a taxpayer, or if I was the person from the administration, I would step down.
Okay,
that's my personal opinion.
That's a good way to answer that.
That's my personal opinion. I'm not the administration. I'm not their lawyer. My personal opinion as a taxpayer, if I was the administration person, I would step down.
Okay.
Or be on leave until your lawyer could do their due process that you think that you need to have.
Yeah, I never even thought about a leave. I didn't know if it was built into city code that a chief executive can take leave. Because what happens, I mean, my understanding is when, at least in some cases, like when the mayor's out of the country, the council president is technically in charge of the city.
But that doesn't happen in the city because we've been told that he does business on his phone outside of the city. He said it in public. Not my words. He said it in public.
I've heard that. I've heard that. And my preference is that they continue to do business by phone for as far away as possible. It can only help the city of Everett, but that's my personal opinion, and hardly an objective one. All right, so I want to thank you for taking time here.
Thank you.
Let you return to your lunch. You are the kickoff.
I also want to mention, I know in Everett they usually say there's no racism in Everett, right?
Oh, really?
I mean, we do have sitting councilors that don't believe there's racism in Everett. I can tell you personally, I went through it to City Hall. And if you are the person that says no to the wrongdoings, you are the bad apple.
Right.
I've applied. I don't know if you remember when after I came out with my story, there was multiple, well, way before that, there was multiple positions that I applied for that I never got. And
Yeah.
people that had no type of education or knowledge of the job got the positions, and they were paid way better than me. And even with intimidation is very high at City Hall. When I ran for office, I don't know if you saw that story. Someone wanted to burn
Yes,
me.
I was going to ask you about that.
Someone wanted to burn me and wanted to intimidate me, but
Did you
wrong
ever
girl,
find out who did
wrong
that?
person, wrong person,
Yeah,
wrong
but
person. I
was
don't easily get intimidated.
there was never any clue as to who did it, right? You're
Well,
talking
let's
about
put
the
it this
skull that
way.
was on the fence post, the plastic skull.
Yes, let's put it this way. There was a video. There was two people that they saw clearly in the video that
Yeah,
placed
walking.
the form head burnt with cut mouth and cut nose.
Right.
And the person walked straight in front of a business that clearly had video cameras. They
Yeah.
didn't find anything.
Was that Dragon
But
Chef?
I'm sorry?
Was it Dragon Chef, the Chinese restaurant?
Yes. But there was a cross, maybe a year or two before, a year before, there was a cross that was knocked over in front of a church at Glendale by a drunk person, and that was deemed a hate crime. But
Yeah,
mine
hate
was
crime by
not a
the
hate
mayor.
crime.
By the mayor, I remember that. It was Reverend Brown's church, wasn't it?
Yes, mine was not a hate crime, but someone wanted to burn me to intimidate me because I wanted to run.
That's
So,
just a coward's way of doing business. I can't call them anything else but coward. I mean, I'm approaching my 70th birthday pretty soon, and I've just become of the mindset these people don't bother me anymore at all. I mean, I'm going to call them for what they are. They want to come see me. I'll give them my address. I'm sitting here in North Carolina. I have a 9mm weapon not far away from me at all times, and if people want to rock, let's go ahead. But enough of the that's gone on in every city government with people colluding to get each other in office, keep each other on boards and things like that. It's absolutely dug into literally what kind of food you put on the table. When they have people arrested or something like that, take away a career, have a person fired, and all of a sudden they're losing 50, 60, $70,000 of income out of their household. It hurts. It's painful. And Everett has always been a school of hardball politics, hard knock
yes.
politics. But there was, and I hate to use the term, but it's the only one that makes any sense to me. At least way back when, there seemed to be an honor among thieves, so to speak. If somebody was known to kind of be cashing in on the city ticket, so long as they weren't hurting anybody else or hurting their colleagues, something like that, a lot of times people would turn a blind eye because not everybody, but a lot of them still had skeletons in the closet. Nobody wanted to start throwing stones. But it was a closed rank. It was literally the old boys club, and these are things that outsiders such as yourself, Peter, and things like that. You challenge that. There's no reason you should know this, but I ran for city council one time legitimately, and the next time was half-heartedly, and then I think it was back in 2003. At that time, and I won't say who the names were, but I'd hang around the council chambers every 2 weeks and take note every week actually, because they do board of aldermen, then council next week, then board of aldermen, then council. Getting to know what the system was like, getting to know the people. So there was a couple of sitting councilors there at the time that they kind of liked my campaign. They liked the way I thought, the way I talked, and it looked like I was going to win a seat. So I was told in gentle terms, you're a little bit rogue. You're out there. You're advocating for this and that, but don't think you're going to come into this council chambers when you win and you're going to set the world on fire. The policy here is, and it always has been, the first term you're in, you're going to sit and you're going to listen. You're not going to sponsor bills. You're not going to debate. You're not going to do this. You're going to learn how business is done. And then once your colleagues understand that you're a person they can do business with, and you win re-election, then you'll start getting into the mechanics of it. So in other words, the short message was, sit down, shut up, you ain't going to do a damn thing. We're controlling this. We need to sniff test you for 2 years to make sure you're a person we can play with, and then we'll go ahead and let you talk a little bit. Thankfully, things have changed at least a little bit. That same code of silence does not exist.
Can I tell you that speech still goes around? Because I was giving that speech.
Oh, really? Oh,
I guess
okay.
they found out the hard way that, I don't keep my mouth shut.
Yeah, I wouldn't have lasted very long either. I just don't have the capacity. I call BS when I hear it far too quick.
But
Very confused about the results of the last election on one particular race. It made absolutely no sense to me at all, and I can't figure out how that person got the votes.
I don't know. I mean, what do I know? I've only been in office for 1 year. I don't know about such lists. I've never heard people talk about it. What I do hear is that people have been giving addresses to register so they could vote in Everett, but I've never heard of a dead list.
Well, I can't believe that what was it? How many? 125 signatures? Was it 200 for council? What do you need?
You need 250 for
250?
for at large and 100 for ward.
100 for ward.
Yes.
Well, even the low number of 100, I find it hard to believe, given the person's reputation and bad press that he received, that there were 100 people willing to put their name on a sheet legitimately saying this is a good person, this is a candidate that I support. So I could only figure that it had to be, the seat had to be attained by some kind of voter fraud. That's it's only an allegation. I have no proof.
We don't
But
know.
that's the way I feel, because I know the people in the city fairly well, and by and large, it is a multicultural group, and while there is a streak of racism and bigotry that goes on there, the grand majority of people are not geared that way in Everett. It's the people in power are, unfortunately.
But
But-
Walter, if you walk the street, it's very easy to get the signatures.
Yeah.
Unless you don't want to do it. Knocking on doors, you meet the greatest people in Everett, and you meet some of the ones you like, God, did you make a mistake? When I was walking the street, actually went on the mayor's street, and this old lady said to me, I don't go to the square because there's too many of you. I don't go to the square anymore because there's too many of you. And another one told me, you have some balls coming onto that street.
Well, like I say, there are those that exist, and even when people would verbalize something like that. Again, when you have the example at the top that sets that standard for everybody else, you're gonna see it in the rank and file below. So when you wonder why city workers, might have an attitude problem or something like that from time to time, they do so knowing there's not going to be any recourse for it. Yeah, it's not only that does the mayor sanction it, he almost encourages it. He set standard for what you see today, and he's the example. And he figures if some of the rank and file figure, if he can get away with it, he's not going to chastise anybody else or penalize anybody else.
But we're going to trust the system, right? We are going to trust the system.
Trust but verify.
I know everybody's saying, it's happening in Boston, it's happening elsewhere. What's wrong with Everett? We're knocking at everybody's
That's a $1 million
door.
question. That's
What's wrong with
question.
Everett? Why did they forget Everett?
Now,
That's been the community's question. Why not Everett? Everywhere you go, online, social media, everywhere, why not Everett?
there's only two prevailing theories that are running around right now, as I understand it. One is that one or more persons has to deal with the feds or with state government as a cooperating individual, cooperating witness, proffers, things like that, or there's a bottleneck somewhere, like up at the ethics committee or something like that, where everything gets funneled to that one point, and there's somebody there that doesn't want to, let it through. It's I learned the hard way that even at the top offices, and I got to know the former lieutenant governor pretty well, and had a lot of dialogue with him. They hate when they get complaints like that.
Yeah.
Okay, because they don't want to have to. If I was a governor, I don't want to have to reach out and investigate, Councilwoman Jabouin for allegations of this, that, and the other thing. Because if she's guilty of it, and if she's an underhanded player, what she's going to do is she's going to turn around, she's going to start talking to people and say, hey, what about that Governor Walter Rice? Didn't he get drunk driving charged 3 years ago? Didn't this happen there? Then they start throwing stones at each other. So it's kind of the glass houses type thing. They don't. They loathe. Everybody is so interconnected. It's just terrible.
Yes.
You take the governor calling for DePiero's resignation, right? But where was the governor when the guy got reelected?
Well, this is how I want to think about it as an Everett resident. I guess we could say the administration is innocent until proven guilty. And the other thing that I would say, why did the state reach out to the council and leave it up to us?
Yeah.
They didn't leave it up to the Boston Council for them to take care of the councilor. No. Why are they putting this on us? You the state.
I'll go out on a limb. And I urge you, don't nod or shake your head. No, don't acknowledge what I'm about to say. This is a personal opinion, but I think it's a valid one. I have never been able to figure out why what I'm seeing going on in Everett City government is not classified as a RICO. You know what a RICO is? Racketeering, influence, and corrupt organization. It was the federal statute that Rudy Giuliani came up with that helped him go after the mob, and the 5 mob families in New York City. And what it was is they got charged as a group. They didn't get charged really as individuals, but they had to prove that there were a couple of crimes committed, a couple of felonies committed. That it was a result, of racketeering and corruption by a corrupt organization. And the reason, places, groups like the mafia and things like that are targeted, and government doesn't, is because they don't consider government an organization. All right, now if you follow my line of reasoning here, I believe that if a campaign fund is used illegitimately or in conjunction with an illegitimate act, that it's racketeering. And it is an organization. A campaign committee is an organization. So, and I'm just talking hypothetically, wink, wink, but if you have a defense fund, let's say, and you got people writing $50,000 checks at one time, and then all of a sudden, gee, they're getting contracts in the city. To me, that fits all the criteria of RICO. Yeah, and carries all the same penalties. So let's say they have 2 federal crimes, and like state crime, one of them is murder. The whole group gets charged with murder. It's like a conspiracy charge. So my belief is, if you look, I don't know how you can come to any other conclusion when you look at a defense fund, and you look at the names of the donors on there, and you look back at city contract, you look back at the regular contribution, and you look at all these variances that are coming through and match the names, and you see this one put $1,000 in the campaign, 3 months later this one gets a variance. It's easy to prove. It's right there. So the selling of city government is very, very blatant and obvious as far as I'm concerned. Right now under the current administration, and there needs to be some way to stop it, some way to put it in charge. Now, this leads me probably to my last question, and I appreciate the time you give me. Is do you happen to know, does the council have the power and capacity to censor the mayor. You know what I mean by censor? Just refuse to let him address city council, refuse to let him sponsor any kind of bills, requests, or anything like that.
Good question. That is something that I'll have to look into.
Yeah, you can start with Robert's Rules of Orders. I don't know if there's anything about censorship in there, but I'd find out through the city charter. Because here's what, and this is another no-brainer, is if you take every single communication that he sends down to the council and wants a change in an ordinance or wants this done or that done, it is, did you ever hear of the game 7 Degrees from Kevin Bacon, where you can take any one person and tie them to Kevin Bacon by naming 6 other people? Say, I know so-and-so, he was a producer who had Kevin Bacon as an actor. So, well, it's the same thing with going on with the selling of city government. Anything that comes down to the council, once you read into it and get underneath it, you can immediately tie that to a donor or a supporter. Oh, gee, I want to, like all the stuff about the Bouvier building and things like that. Again, I don't expect you to acknowledge because you have your council body to think of. But as far as I'm concerned, he's just taking care of the guy that owns that restaurant there. I can't even think of the name of it right now. The one that burnt down and then moved down there, and now it's a nice patio. Did all these bills and all these little improvements he wants to make in the square. This is at the request or at the favor of the person that wants to buy that building and open up. Further.
I was told that he's against that. He was against the changes at the square. My issue with it was, if we're spending all that money, why not go beyond the library? Why are we just at that corner for all this money?
Well,
why not Glendale Square?
If he's against it, maybe he's got a better offer from somebody else. That's all.
But I was told that he was against that specific
Same
project.
thing on the
but I'm not.
Pope John property. We know what that's all about. Most people know what it's all about, but I've dug a little bit deeper and I finally figured it all out. If you take and look where that Pope John property is located, right, that's his high on a hill, and that's the attractiveness. Way back when that place, and I can't remember the name of a big high-rise apartment up on way up on 99 in Malden. Can't think of it. They were luxury apartments, and you could see the Boston skyline from there and everything else. So that's a very attractive piece of property. But when you look south going down 99 towards the Malden line, there aren't that many houses between where the Pope John is and the Malden line. And it's the developers' long-term plan. They want to buy everything all the way down. They want to build. They want to build a cement jungle right down to that line. I would never be able to find any documentation that proves that, but I know it to be a fact. That's exactly what they want to do. So that's why he's holding out. Well, it's obvious he's holding out on the Pope John issue because he's got a promise in the works. And that's what it comes down to.
We have to think of the kids. We have to think of the kids.
I'm going to have to cut this off. Oh, that's you messaging me. Oh, I was going to say, I got somebody messaging me. So again, I appreciate your time. I really
thank you.
appreciate your candor. I am so glad to finally, officially meet you and talk to you because you have had my admiration since
Thank you for having me, and
don't change anything.
And thank you for your time. Thank you for your energy. Trying to get people to be involved. That's what we need. We need someone that knows the city. People, even if people that are new, get involved. I've met some people that have said to me, politics too dirty. I'm not into politics. Well, do you rent? Do you own? Do you have any kids at the school? Your life is all about politics.
I lived a lot of different places, and I was in my mid-30s when I came to Everett in 1991. But despite having lived other places, you all stole my heart. You may be a tough bunch. I've been out of there since 2014. but out of all the different places I've lived, it's the people in Everett I stay in touch with. This may be a gritty bunch, but you're true, and I love the passion that goes with it. So you're
I
welcome.
have hope, I have faith that, we will be proud of Everett again. We
Oh, you
will. We will.
definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Thank
All
you.
right.
Thank you so
Appreciate
much.
you. God bless.
Thank
Look
you.
forward to it on the flip side.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye. Bye.